We're live and local here in the Catskills over WIOX 91.3 FM. This is your host, Gary Falk, with our Seekers and Finders show. And our guest today, our special guest, I should say, is Stefan Bright. Stefan, are you there?
I am here, Gary.
Okay, it's great to hear your voice. You're sounding good. And people tuning in, I'll just say that this show is all about the seeker's journey, the hero's journey, you could call it that, the famous Joseph Campbell book, The Hero's Journey. We're modeling our show after that, talking with people who have trod the spiritual path for many, many years, and we're talking about their experiences and what they've found, what they've discovered, and what they can offer others who are also on the path. So, Stefan, give us a little background. I know you and I go back a long way, but where did this whole thing start for you?
Well, I thought about it after we talked with each other a couple of weeks ago, and I realized that it really started when I was young, living in Philadelphia with my grandfather. So my grandfather was a really incredible human being. Tons of love, great smile, great laugh, and he was an everyman. So he could meet anybody and just bring joy to them just by his presence. And he never had any judgments about anybody. So I used to hang out with him. My grandparents had a dress shop in Philadelphia, and I always used to spend a lot of time with him. And he would always talk to everybody, and I somehow it just, by symbiosis I get, it just filtered into me. So that's how my whole thing unconsciously started. But I was really had a life of actually my life was built on fear because fear was the driving force in my life. I did everything. I have a very strong energy in my solar plexus, so things around me which I had ambitions for, which I tried to do, there was always a fear aspect about it because I needed mentors in my life, just the way I was. I guess starting with my grandfather and certain teachers along the way. I always had a mentor. I always looked up to this person and tried to emulate them. But there was always some kind of energy that kept me from really reaching that pinnacle of success in everything I tried to do, because it was redirecting me to another path, and I was unconscious about it at the time. I really didn't know. So I guess my first spiritual experience happened in college when I smoked cannabis, and my mind started to expand, because before that, my life was like being in the rapids, moving really fast, not having any sense of space or foundation. It's just the way my mind worked. So when I got into college and I started, experimenting with cannabis, I started to settle down a little bit. My mind started to explore certain areas. And then I was a drama major at the University of Miami, and playing other characters kind of took me out of myself, allowed me to be something else than the personality that I was. So that and the cannabis led me to the music business. And I had a wonderful mentor there, a guy that I worked for, Alan Douglas. He had a company called Douglas Records. And he was a very spiritual guy, had a lot of great connections. And I felt like I stepped into a space of stardom with him, because the people that we were associating with, Jimi Hendrix, Tim Leary, it was this whole psychedelic period.
It sounds like the 60s. So give us a little, historical context there. You mentioned Jimi Hendrix. So this is all happening in what year?
So this was 69, 70.
Okay.
I went to work for Douglas Records, and we had my first projects were working on spoken word albums by Malcolm X and Lenny Bruce.
Great.
So I was involved with editing their speeches and putting it together in album form to put out as a spoken word album. And both Malcolm X and Lenny Bruce were kind of like favorites of mine when I was, doing that whole thing in college with expanding my mind. So now that I'm working on their actual projects, I mean, Alan took the rights to the estates for both of those people. And so that was my first project, and I was very proud of it. I mean, it was like awesome. And then we had a group called The Last Poets, which was like the first rap group.
I remember The Last Poets. And ironically enough, I think I bought that, the Lenny Bruce album, the best of whatever it was, back in, late 60s. Oh, so then so talk about the Last Poets and what happened with that.
So The Last Poets were on the Soul Show on Channel 13, and right. Alan Douglas saw them, and he said, he wanted to sign them. So we signed them, and we worked in the studio with them. They were amazing artists, fantastic poets. And we had a modicum of success with them. And they really started the first rap scenario. And if you talk to rap artists that came along in the 90s and the, late 90s, they'll tell you that The Last Poets were basically the godfathers of early rap.
Sounds like
then, Jimi Hendrix was a friend of Alan Douglas's wife, who had a clothing shop on St. Mark's Place. And Jimmy would go in there all the time, hang out with them. Downstairs in their basement, there was the guy who made all the fringe jackets for all the rock stars. So there was this hub of rock and roll stardom that I was introduced to. And it made me feel like I was part of it, even though I was just like a little slice. But working with Hendrix, now, people ask me about this, but, we used to spend some time in my office in our, we had a duplex apartment in west side of Manhattan, which was our recording office. And he would come up, we would sit down, we would talk. I mean, we were friendly. We would hang out. I've gone to clubs with him. We weren't BFFs, but there was a feeling of being with him that elevated me. And it took my ego to another space. And at the same time, there was this yearning for something other. So we, at the time, besides Hendrix, we signed the guitarist John McLaughlin.
Okay.
He was working with Miles Davis. He was in the States. Douglas signed him, and Alan and I worked on his first album called Devotion. And then when it came time for, promotional tour or anything like that, he kind of disappeared. And when I had first met him, he had like long hair and a beard. And he shows up about 6 months later at the office, and he's all clean cut, crew cut. And we started to talk, and he was telling me about his guru. Now, interestingly enough, the guru he was telling me about, I had seen a transcendental image of him on the subway every time I would travel to work, and it scared the hell out of me. I mean,
there was a picture. There was a picture of the guru.
Right, on the subway, it was like a promotional picture of him and his transcendental consciousness. And I would look at it and say, oh, my God, who is this alien, right?
Right.
So McLaughlin comes in, and actually, Alan Douglas had given me a book called The Third Eye, written by this supposed Tibetan Lama, Lobsang Rampa.
I remember that book. T. Lobsang Rampa was that was a big book in the 1960s. In fact, I read it, yeah.
And I fell in love with it. This was it. Oh, my God, it was opening up my whole thing.
The Third Eye,
Then I discovered that the books was a hoax. It was written by an English guy who fabricated this whole story.
Right.
So
he was a carpenter, right? He was a carpenter or something in England.
Plumber, carpenter,
whatever. Yeah. Okay. In England. Okay.
So basically, my spiritual life was started by a hoax, which
that's hilarious.
Which was pretty cool. I mean, whatever.
It's hilarious because people I talk to, they say, "Oh, my spiritual life started with this exalted spiritual blah blah." But your spiritual life, your real spiritual life, although it sounds like you were kind of really in tune with it all along, was started by a hoax. I think that's hilarious.
So and when John McLaughlin came into the office and we started talking, and he told me about his guru, the same one that I saw on the subway. And I said, wow, maybe I should, can you get me an introduction? He says, sure. I live out in Queens now. Why don't you come out? I'll invite you to dinner. So we set up a date, and I went out. And I went to the guru's house. He was having a meditation. And I became a disciple. Like, what's going on here?
What, overnight? I mean, you became a disciple the same night you went out there?
No, not the same night. That night I was just a sincere seeker, as he used to call all the people that showed up at his. I was just one of the sincere seekers. But because, now here's the interesting thing. Because I was this friend of John McLaughlin's, it put me in another category.
Yes.
I just wasn't one of the disciples bringing one of their friends in. John McLaughlin was bringing me in. So I already was head and shoulders, above, the want of the guru to...
The regular...
bring me,
the regular sincere seekers. You were a special sincere seeker. Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it.
Maybe I had something to offer him that, could manifest as well. Anyway... So
got it.
That was in June of 71, and in November, first week of November of 71, he accepted me as a disciple. And I, until June of 72, I kept commuting from. I was living in the West Village, so I would commute to Queens, and he also had a couple that had meditations on Tuesday night in Manhattan. I would go to those things. And then I became a disciple. So, I mean, I moved to Queens in June of 72, and my whole life turned around at that point because I found another mentor. This was the mentor that was going to do everything for me, my spiritual guru. Okay?
The real. In other words, start out. Your first mentor was your grandfather. Then was it Joe Douglas? And
Alan Douglas.
Alan Douglas, rather. And now the real authentic guru arrives. Is that right? I mean, in your mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I spent 5 years there, and something happened. And I fell in love with another disciple there, and we left the center. But the funny thing is that the night before we left, the guru shows up at my house. And
was it planned, or did he just show up?
No. I get a call from one of his, consigliaries that... the guru wants to come and see you. So wow. I said, okay. So he shows up at the house, and I had a chair there for him. He sat down in the chair. I knelt in front of him, and he put his hands on my head. And as he always did, he leaned in to whisper, those important spiritual messages while he was blessing you. And he said to me, dear son, I don't want you to leave the center. I have to tell you, you are the third most surrendered disciple in my center.
Wow.
And at first was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm the third. I mean, there are hierarchies way above me.
Right.
But I'm the third most surrendered disciple. And then I said, oh, wait a second. No, I'm not.
You knew better? You knew better.
Yes, I did. And then the last thing he said to me, he said, I only have one last thing to tell you.
Uh-oh.
The Supreme will never forgive you.
Oh, no.
But I will forgive you.
Oh, God.
And I said, that's it. If he's going to forgive me, but the one he actually prays to is not going to forgive me, there's something definitely wrong here.
What's wrong with... Yeah. Go ahead.
It turns out that was my second hoax. So my whole spiritual life changed on two hoaxes.
Two hoaxes. True. Not one, but two.
Two hoaxes. That's it. Right. So...
a double hoax.
Yeah. And so my wife and I left the center, and I personally kind of like went into the other side of the coin. Got a little,
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
It was the end of the 70s. It was the 80s. I left, at the time I was working CBS Records. I had left Douglas Records. Actually, I left Douglas Records when I became a disciple and went to work for CBS in the advertising department, producing radio and TV spots for the record company. And it was a great job. I used to show up, in the disciple whites. Everybody would make fun of me, but we all had a great time. And I made a lot of friends there. And then my mother had remarried, and my stepfather was in a business. He was very successful. So he asked me in 1978 to come into his business, and we had just left the center. We really had nothing. It was going to be a matter of making much more money. And I said to Linda, what do you think? And, we kind of molded over, yes, this is a good idea. So I joined his company and spent 12 years in utter despair.
In utter despair?
Yeah, because I hated the work.
God.
It was like it was nepotism to the nth degree, because he had a son and he had a grandson, and I was like the stepson. It was crazy. Anyway, I learned a lot. My soul took in a lot of information, and finally, as things would be, which is really weird, my stepfather got ill, and my mother got ill. They both got cancer, two different types. But in 1991, in April, they went into my stepfather was in Sloan Kettering, having treatment done, and my mother, who had contracted lung cancer, she went in for treatment, and for all intents and purposes, she was getting better. And I visited her this Saturday night, and I wake up to find out that she passed at 4:00 in the morning.
Wow. Okay?
And then on top of that, 6:00 the next night, my stepfather passed away.
No.
So within that short amount of time, they were going out of my life. Now, they were also part of my mentoring,
Yes.
I was always trying to please people, and there was always this fear that I couldn't, so it was working back and forth. My parents are now gone, my mother and stepfather. And then in January, now here's the whole spiritual experience thing, how the universe kind of like gives you the what and wherefore of everything. We're kind of down about the whole thing. I don't have a job. I'm kind of like on, I'm getting, money from the trust a little bit. And in January 4th of 1992, our youngest son passed away. He's almost 6 years old, and he died he passed away in our house from an illness that he had overnight. It was a stomach illness that turned into something really bad. And so now here was like oh my goodness.
Oh my God! You're getting hit. You're getting hit with everything.
Left, right, and every other way.
Wow.
Okay? However, because of our spiritual beliefs, it carried us through. Now, here's the interesting thing. I get a call from my stepfather owned a fur trading business, and he also owned a mink ranch in Cary, Illinois, or Indiana, one of the two. I can't remember now.
Right.
The guy that ran the ranch, Tony, and his wife had lost 2 of their 4 children. And they were very believers in Jesus. And I get a call from Tony's wife. Tony, called me and said, "Hi, Tony. This is Tony. I want to put my wife on the phone." And she started to talk to me. They were Dutch. And she started to tell me about just having faith, that I'll get through it. And the way she expressed it was so beautiful, so humbling. I started to cry because I understood their pain when they went through it and how they survived. And so it instilled in me some hope.
Uh-huh.
There would be light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
So there was light at the end of the tunnel because both Linda and I also had our spiritual time at the center to support us. And strangely enough, we ended up going back to the center because we needed that at that time, back to the Guru. And he accepted us, as coming back as sincere seekers again.
Starting from scratch, in other words.
Yeah, well, but yes, starting from scratch. We weren't living there. We were living where we were in New Jersey. We had our other 2 children, and we would bring them with us. And after about a year, and we were being very sincere, the Guru told someone, and I'm not going to mention his name because you know who it is, to tell us that we're no longer really invited to come to the meetings.
You were disinvited, but had you done anything to...
No, I mean, but there was some... Look, I had an arranged marriage when I was in the center, as you know, went on, and
right.
It lasted 3 years. It wasn't successful, and the woman was still at the center, and I'm sure it created some kind of confusion there. And the thing is that what I realized was that the experience that I received being at the center was mine alone.
Right.
I brought it into myself because I had the intention and the aspiration to do it. Now, everybody believes that the Guru, gives you all of this power. He blesses you. But I never really felt anything in that way. I've spoken to a lot of disciples about it.
Right.
And they talk about how they feel this power coming from him. I never did. I never felt the love that I wanted to feel. And so there was this kind of gap between me being a brainwashed disciple of an Indian master and me being able to get out of those clutches and work it out on my own. And which is eventually what I found out, because with all of the stuff that's going on, with all the cults that are going on, with all the people that are brainwashed in every single way to whatever belief system they have, and it's not wrong for them. But for me, I discovered eventually that I was the one who had to find my own inner self, that the journey was mine alone, that the whole mentorship that I had, all well and good. I had learned my lessons. Now I had to do it on my own. And it eventually worked out really beautifully for me because I had more spiritual experiences in the last 2 years of my life, in my late 70s, than I had for the previous 70 years of my life, so...
Wait, you're talking about the last 2 years of your life up till now, in other words?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm 78 years old. So,
okay.
Within the last 2 years, 76, 77, 78, I've had more incredible experiences. I've opened up because I've let myself go. And it was the letting go that allowed me to open up. And before, my personality, which was always trying to please or, try and achieve something, was always held back by that fear. So that grasp with that fear and that striving to do something above it was like a tightrope. It was, right. Pulling, and not creating anything. And once I was allowed that rope to just break and take that fall,
So are you saying the fear was? Are you saying then the fear was gone? Is that the?
No, the fear's still there.
Okay.
It's part of my human nature. It's just. But I understand it now because I guess maybe listening and reading Eckhart Tolle helped me quite a bit. And here was the other thing. In 2009, we were living in California, Glenn and I. And we came back to the East Coast for a visit, and we were at a dinner party at some friend's house, and I had a very dear friend there that I had known for a while from Philadelphia. And everybody left the table. We were eating outside, and they all left, and it was just him, myself, sitting at the table, and he was telling me about this book that he wrote. And I was like, oh, yeah, tell me about it. So he's reading me his chapter out of the book, and it's all about ego. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like mesmerized. I'm like, Robert, what is that?
What book was it?
He said, it's called Letters from 500. I said, what is this?
Okay.
He says, I've downloaded this. It's just been a download into me, and the book is almost complete. And I said, I'm blown away. Can you give me the manuscript, or can you give me, printed pages so I can read? So he gave me the rough draft of the book before it was going to go to publish. And I took it back to California, and it was, 275 pages. And I sat there all weekend and read the whole thing. And I'm not a good reader because I'm slightly dyslexic. And so I'm not great at reading. I've got to visualize stuff, but I could not take my eyes off the page. And everything it said in the book resonated with me. And that's the thing I found out. When you come down here, your soul enters. There's stuff that you resonate with, and there's stuff that you don't.
Right.
And if you can find out and stay in that flow of the stuff that resonates with you, you'll pretty well make it through life.
That's the key.
Much of a problem. Yeah.
Let's pause here because we have to take a station break. We're at the halfway mark, and this is a really truly fascinating conversation. So the book that Robert gave you the copy of, or before published, was called Letters from the 500. Let's pause it there.
Letters from 500. Right.
Letters from 500. Let's pause it here to let people know that you are listening to WIOX Community Radio. If you're just tuning in, live and local, right here in the Catskill Mountains at 91.3 FM and MTC Cable Channel 20, 107.5 on the campus of SUNY Delhi, and everywhere at WIOXradio.org on computers or smartphones. And this is Seekers and Finders with your host, Gary Falk. Today we're talking to Stefan Bright. And Stefan, fascinating. Up till now, the story is fascinating. I'm wondering if it can get any more fascinating. So what did you do at this point when you had this book that you devoured, Letters from 500?
Well, when you get into something so deep and you start to believe in it, and of course, there you go, another belief system, right?
Right.
It can either hinder you or help you. And like I said, I resonated so much with this that it opened my heart, because the being that was talking here was talking, and I know there's other people that have channeled, other beings, all well and good, but this specific one
right.
was talking about just the essence of being and how simple it is, to just be without making judgments. And without finding fault, with being a positive thinker. Now, I understand that people are born with all kinds of different situations, chemical reactions in their body, people suffering from depression, this thing and that thing. But if you can get a feeling of peace, which is the one thing that entered into my life later on, which allowed the fear to kind of like become a kind of thing on the side for me, which would show up in stress kind of situations, but I was always able to say, hey, shut it off,
Okay, so it's no longer the driver. Is that what you're saying?
It's not the driver anymore.
Okay, got it. But it's there, and you acknowledge it, but you tell it to keep quiet or whatever. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, but my whole belief system started to dissolve. So this whole central figure that's up there or out there, I just couldn't find it anymore. This God thing. I couldn't, and I wasn't an atheist. I guess I would say, yes, I was agnostic because I wasn't believing in any of the religions anymore.
Right.
But I felt deep in my being that there was just something greater than all of that. And it had to do with each one of us actually being that greater than all being. That we're having this experience on the planet, this all-powerful force of consciousness is just having this experience through us, and we should just enjoy it.
Okay, but hold on. I want to clear this up. So, but in this instance or in this phase, there's no being as such. Like you mentioned the Supreme when you were with the Guru. There was the Supreme. Right. So there was a being higher than the Guru who wouldn't forgive you. But anyway, but in this situation, this channel work, Letters from 500, there's no being per se, but there's just consciousness. Am I getting that?
Consciousness. Okay. Yes, consciousness. And everybody talks about oneness.
Right.
But, I was thinking about this the other day, that we'll all enter into a state of oneness.
Right.
But oneness is still something. It's not formless. Oneness is one.
Right.
And that's still, something. So how do you allow yourself to just let it all go and float with a sense of peace and calm and understanding that it's all cool. It's all fine.
And no idea of oneness or not oneness or nothing. In other words, you're not thinking about what this thing is, like the Supreme or the oneness or the... Yeah, I got you.
Okay, but then this was interesting that this happened to me. Eckhart Tolle always talked about the witness consciousness, where you can step out of yourself. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, I got a knock on my inner door, and I looked, and there it was, the witness. I said, "Whoa!"
It was there. Cool. So there was something there.
Yes.
Called the witness. What was it?
I guess it's my soul or my inner being or my higher being that I never really, paid attention to, because I was so busy in my own mind, in my own head, in my own, BS, that I just didn't slow down and shut it off long enough to hear that voice say, hey. And then what started to happen is it became a separate essence. So every time my personality would project something that seemed, part of Stefan's, shenanigans.
Right.
And it's not conscious now. It's not my conscience. It's not my conscience.
I got it.
I would hear this separate essence in the back say, oh, what is that? That's pretty funny. I can't believe it, right? So I was actually seeing myself from this inner space.
The witness.
Yes, and being able to have my ego come under some kind of adjustment. Because let's face it, we're human beings. We all have egos. I don't care how high you are on the spiritual plane. That ego's there until the day you die. It's there for a purpose. Learn to work with it, okay? And if you can learn to work with it through being a sense of humility. Now, I'll go back to my grandfather. The one thing that was instilled with me was kindness, compassion, and empathy. So what happened was, when that witness thing, my whole heart center opened up, and it started to expand, and I started to have, feelings deeper than just sentimentality.
Right.
I started to feel things through hearing music or watching. The greatest thing that's happened to me is that watching the human spirit in action, and it just happened with the Olympics. This was the best meditation I ever had. I'm watching the Olympics, and I'm seeing people that were called out, that were never going to make it, come to the challenge and do it. Wow. That human spirit that drives you. And my heart center opened up, and it started to expand so much, and it tranced me out. I started to cry. Wow. I felt this bliss inside my heart, because I was actually experiencing their joy, and it had nothing to do with me. It was just me having their experience, because I guess that's the way we're supposed to be. All this divisiveness that's going down, all this judgment that's going down, that's not who we are as, spiritual beings. So anyway, without getting into the politics of it, I really discovered my heart center. And it has been, my guiding force that's led me to this new creative thing that I'm doing, because Linda and I are photographers. And then when we moved to Vermont, our photography business kind of took a lull, so I started working on digital art. But I found that, too, came from a space that I had no control over, that it was just this creative energy that came from the highest place, and if I allowed it to just flow through me without trying to control it, I could create things that I had no idea I was capable of. And that's right where I am right now. So
I've seen your digital art on Facebook, and people who know you, of course, follow you on Facebook, and so it's really incredible. Where can people? Is there a website where people can go check it out?
Yes, of course. Well, thank you for that advertisement. That's
okay.
Great.
Well, I want people to see. I want people to see this art. It's so unique and unusual. I don't think there's anything comparable to it. It's just unbelievable. You have to see it to believe it. So, what's the website, or how can people besides Facebook?
Okay. So it's my name, Stefan Bright, and for everybody, my name Stefan is spelled with an F, so it's STEFANBRIGHT.myportfolio.com. So if you go to that site, you'll see my work. And, again, that's part of my spiritual journey, because I can sit down once a day and produce this stuff. And it's funny, because the guru used to sit, he did 10,000 paintings or whatever it was, and he used to sit there with a paintbrush, putting spots on the canvas, these big canvases, and there was a hoopla and and he had an art show and this, that, and the other thing. But I never felt any intent in the work. It was kind of like, it was to set records. It seeed. In other words, to set records. If you want name and fame, I guess that's what he did. Yeah. So. But I have to give him credit for, he really was the one that turned the light switch on for me. If I hadn't gone to the center, I probably would have maybe found it another way, but he expedited the situation, because after I left the center, my whole life was filled with spirituality, which it never was before, because I was born in a family that really wasn't religious in any way, so...
So let's give the website one more time. So it's Stefan with an F, STEFAN, Bright, BRIGHT.
All one word.
Right.
Dot. My portfolio.
Okay, stefanbright.myportfolio.com. Yes, if you're listening, definitely check Stefan's art out. So you've brought us up to date. What a journey. And now it seems like your spiritual life that took the form of, well, the music business there with John McLaughlin and Jimi Hendrix, and then later on with the Indian spiritual master. Now it's taking the form of producing this great art. Is that a correct assessment?
Well, I guess you have to leave it to other people to think that it's great, but I'm producing.
I'm saying it's great because I've seen it.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. But here's the other thing. I thought about this also. So, things impact you on both sides of your life. And when we moved to Vermont, we went in for a physical, both Linda and I. And it turns out I found out that I had a malignant tumor in my bladder. Ooh. Oh, my God.
Uh-oh.
I just So, I had cancer. Well, it was a malignant tumor in my bladder. And the guy, the urologist, he took it out, and I went for treatment. And it turned out, fortunately, that the cancer was only in the tumor and hadn't gone in to the muscle or anything.
Oh, nice.
So the treatment they gave me was 6 weeks, and then off, and then 4 weeks, and then off. And anyway, I'm clear.
And when did this happen? What year was this?
This was in July of 2021.
Okay, all right.
So for the last 2 years, up until I was going for treatment up until the last 6 months ago. But so this is what happened. When I got it, I came back home. And this is before I went for treatment. Now I'm dealing with the whole cancer thing.
Right.
And I'm sitting on my couch, and I started to think about Ram Dass talking about when he had his stroke.
Yes, I remember.
And what he said, that all the spirituality that he had thought that he had went down the toilet.
Right. When
he had his stroke. It was like, oh, my God, I'm going to die.
Yes.
Now, here was this guy who was beyond the fear of death, fearing death.
Right.
And I'm sitting here saying, wow, now I know exactly how he felt. My mortality is being challenged. And
did fear arise there?
Of course it did. I cried for like 15 minutes. Linda was in the other room. I had the door closed here. I was crying, and then I stopped crying, and all of a sudden this sense of peace came over me.
Wow.
And I was like, it's cool, man. It's just part of the journey. And the fear of death was gone. So.
But it sounds like that was resolved because so you experienced the fear of death, but then you went into a state of peace. So it sounds like that fear of death just kind of fell away.
But here's the funny part about it. Whatever I said about the guru and all, he had some great writings. And I immediately pulled out, printed out a copy of his poem, The Absolute.
Oh, yes.
Because that's the death poem.
It is. It really is.
Of it all.
I love it.
I hung it in my closet, so every time I opened my closet door, I could look at it and feel like I was part of that whole spiritual journey. But the thing that really grasped me was the last 4 lines of the thing. And I'm going to read it to you now.
The final end of nature's dance. I love that. Listen, I'm with you. I'm with you as far as that poem goes. It doesn't get any better than that. Go ahead.
This put me in my place and set me straight.
Go ahead.
And the last paragraph of the poem is, my spirit aware of all the heights. I am mute in the core of the sun. I barter nothing with time and deeds. My cosmic play is done. And I started to cry and said, that's it. It's so cool.
Okay, read it again. Okay, read it again. Read it again. The final, is the final. Okay, good.
My spirit aware of all the heights. I am mute in the core of the sun. I barter nothing with time and deeds. My cosmic play is done.
I'll grant that he was in his transcendental consciousness when he wrote that, because I tell you that does that's a knockout.
He sure was. And you know what? I'll tell you, for all the supposed egoic animosity I had for Batman,
right?
I love him for that. I absolutely love him. And the other thing that I learned was the whole concept of unconditional love. Because once I was able to move into that state of unconditional love, I mean, I learned it when my children were born, because it was always about me. Yeah. When my kids were born, all of a sudden, I started to feel love in a different way. But the whole concept of unconditional love is so impacting that I started to feel great about everybody. You know, I could walk down the street and people would smile at me for no, apparent reason.
Right.
Just because maybe my energy was good or something. I smiled back. Yeah, I was.
It must have been. They were picking up on it. They were picking up on it.
Exactly. You know, and so I mean, there's so much coolness in this whole journey that if we just want to get into it, and I'm sure a lot of people don't, but you know. Yeah, so, I mean, it's going to... Look, Gary, you know, when I thought about talking about this, I wrote down some, keywords because I ramble, and I didn't want to do that, even though I probably did.
No, you didn't. No, you know what? I think you stayed pretty much on course. It was a great narrative, and I could follow it, and I'm sure people who didn't know you probably just could follow it. No, you didn't ramble. You stayed on course. It was good. Go ahead.
So, I guess, we were talking about belief systems, and even though I didn't read deeply into Krishnamurti, I had heard all about his concepts of there shouldn't be any belief systems, you know?
Yes.
So don't even believe that there aren't any belief systems, But that takes you to the point of, the place where everything's up for grabs, and you just look out and grab it without any judgment, without any negativity. Just grab it, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, just let it go. But don't worry about getting to that space, because that worryment's going to stress you out, and that stress is going to cause cancer, and that cancer is going to take you to where that cosmic play is done. So
really done. Hey, Stefan, listen, hold on a second. That was the perfect segue into a plug for my next show, because my next show, which is going to be not next Monday, but I'm here every other Monday, is a mutual friend of ours, George Gio, who we love on Facebook. Gio introduced me to this guy who wrote a book about Krishnamurti, and I'm going to be interviewing him. His name is Dr. Tom Eisman, and that'll be in 2 weeks. So we'll be talking a lot about. So if people are interested in Krishnamurti, we're going to be talking a lot about Krishnamurti in 2 weeks. But so I'm glad you brought it up. I'm sure it was no accident, even though you probably were not aware of it. It was like that's the way the cosmos works. I needed the plug to get in a plug. Okay, that's great. Krishnamurti, yeah.
Okay, so interesting you should say that, because this morning I have these aspiration little cards that are in a dish, and every morning you pick one up, see what, kind of intentions you can bring to them. And I put my hand in, I picked up a card and it said communication. I'd never picked that card up before. I'm about to do your show, and there it is, communication. And I said, you know what? The universe really is working for you.
I think it is.
As long as you let it.
Well, you know what? I think that's a great point. As long as you let it. As long as you let it. We have to get out of our, from what I've heard and from what I've experienced in my own life, we have to get out of our own way. But the universe is working for us if we let it. I love that. I love that idea. So listen, our cosmic play here is almost done. We've got a few minutes left, but I want to, pose a question to you that I pose to all people I interview, and I take the role of I'm a spiritual seeker. I'm starting out on the path, or I haven't been on the path that long. Or, where should I go? What should I do? Do you have any kind of recommendations or advice, guidance? Now you be the guru, okay? We're gonna switch roles here. Now you're the guru. I'm the sincere seeker coming to you.
The only thing I can say is to take a minute and just be honest with yourself. And, just think about what it is that you're looking for from expanding your journey and expanding your consciousness and becoming more aware of what's beyond the veil that has been given to us so we can't see it down in this human form. But if you don't want to do it, and here's the other thing, nobody's forcing you.
Right.
And if this incarnation, you weren't supposed to do it, it's not going to happen.
No.
So if you were meant to come down and to take this journey a little further, somewhere along the line, a door's going to open up or something's going to be said that's going to go bling, and it's going to start you on your journey. So that's the only thing. Reading books, all of that stuff, that's being forced on you.
Right.
You got to wait till that inner spark says, now it's time.
The inner spark. Well, I think it's no accident that you and I kind of crossed paths there in Queens back in 1972 when you came out. I thought you were pretty big. You had a reputation of being a pretty big deal in the music business. We didn't know you used to pal around with Jimi Hendrix, but we knew you worked for CBS Records, and we thought you were pretty much a hot shot.
Well, I got to tell you one last story. This is pretty funny. Carlos Santana was also a disciple,
right?
So we became friends. So my wife at the time and I took him bowling in Flushing, Queens, and we go into the bowling alley. There's tons of other people there. And Carlos had just cut his hair, and nobody recognized him. And I'm sitting in that curved seat,
Yeah.
just looking around at everything, and then looking at Carlos bowling. And I said, oh, my God, I'm in a Flushing bowling alley with Carlos Santana. How important am I?
I mean, come on. You were number 3 on the Guru's list in Serenity Sabbath. You were pretty important. I must say, you were pretty important.
Yeah, well, yeah. And look at me now.
And now you have your own art website, Stefan Bright. What is it again? Stefan Bright with an F.
StefanBright.myportfolio.com.
Fabulous, fabulous art. And so, do you look down the road and see what might lie ahead, or
no?
What?
Well, here's the other thing. I don't think about my past anymore, and I stopped thinking about it a couple of years ago. I guess when you get old, that's what happens. I didn't really want to dwell on my past,
right? Because
whatever I was looking at, brought up stuff that I really didn't want to concentrate on.
I'm with you there.
Yeah. So as far as what's down the road, I take it. I'm trying to do what Tole says, live in the moment. And it's been working for me because as soon as I start thinking about the future, I get frustrated.
Right.
So I'm not thinking about it anymore because who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. And, I might just be getting ready for my next incarnation.
Well, maybe that's what we're doing. I don't know. But by the way, I'm glad you mentioned the Tole book because I remember The Power of Now. That was I read that book, and we know we've said it or you said it. It's not about reading books, but sometimes a book will come along that really will knock you for a loop. And Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. I remember that really had a big impact on me when I read it, and I think you mentioned it too a few times.
Yes, but more than that. His second book, A New Earth, was even more impacting. That was the book. The Power of Now is fine, but when I read A New Earth, that blew me away, just like Letters from 500 blew me away. And by the way, if you want to see anything about Letters from 500, you can just Google it online, and there's tons of stuff about it. So. Okay,
Letters from 500. Google that online. And what was the second Tolle book? I don't think I read the second one. What was that?
A New Earth.
Okay, A New Earth. Okay, yes, I remember that, but I don't remember anything about that. Okay, we're winding down. Stefan, great. This is I found out a whole lot of stuff. I thought I knew a lot of stuff about you and your journey, but today was a revelation. Really, a lot of great stuff came out, stuff that I had not been aware of. Great story, great journey, great everything. And I don't know, final words, final thoughts, anything. We got about minute and 35 seconds.
Well, to say the least, I'm talked out. But,
I'll tell you one thing. I want to congratulate you. Every other guest I've had on, there were like little pauses and and say, "Oh well, I better throw." I'm saying I better throw something in here. But with you, I didn't have to throw anything in because you just went for a solid, nonstop hour. It was great.
Believe me, if you talk with any of my supposed friends, they will tell you that's who I am.
That's who you are.
Stop talking.
Okay.
And it turns out that my children are just like that, and so are my grandchildren. So there is something about DNA.
I'm very impressed. I didn't have to step up once. You just were on a roll, but it was a great roll, and I want to thank you for being my guest. And people out there, so we'll see you in 2 weeks. This has been a great discussion with Stefan Bright. I'm Gary Falk, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. So long for now.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Stefan. Our cosmic play is done.